Hey, shalom, shalom. Hayawam
Shalom.
tawab la atam, which is good day unto you all. Anachna waha bari sha'ala with the Hebrew Israelites coming to you week in and week out through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, to preach to you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, Haitians, and Israelite foreigners. Nachamatam kaya, hamalak watashamayim kwara, repent ye for the kingdom of heaven is at hand, first and foremost. Before we get started, we can go ahead and give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rocha HaKodash. While double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us the truth and rule well. And much respect to you, bros, out there pushing this truth with all righteousness and sincerity. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
All right, so right here we got the word written for rain. All right, with the first letter being Mayam. The next one is Ta, which is Tana, which means to surround. All right, and it has the Ra, which is Ra'ash, which is the head, because water surrounds the head. All right, we understand that the scriptures, when the Lord had the scriptures codified, essentially, the Lord speaks through similitudes, and I'm actually start with that. All right, Zah Hawashai, this is Hosea chapter 12, and we'll get verse 10, and it says, "I have also spoken by the prophets, and I have multiplied visions, and used similitudes by the ministry of the prophets." All right, and this is ultimately a similitude for what the word of the Lord does. All right, the word of the Lord surrounds the heads, all right, of everyone. All right, and we're essentially going to start with Deuteronomy chapter 32 and verse 2. Baba Kushaka, the brother hold Job 36, and we'll start at verse 27. But this is Deuteronomy chapter 32, and we'll get verse 1. It says, "Give ear, O heaven, O ye heavens, and I will speak, and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth," which the heavens, who has the communication in the heavens, all right, it will be the elect. So it says, "My doctrine shall drop as the rain, my speech shall distill as the dew, as the small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass." All right, and ultimately, what does rain do when it rains? If someone wants to go outside, the rain drops on their head, and it drips from the head, because the head is like a circle, so it drips from the head and it goes down to the rest of the body. So essentially, with the elect, all right, because this starting to the top of this verse, it's ultimately going into the elect. You see, and this word surrounds, all right, the heads of the elect, all right, for their betterment. All right, while if it was to rain, all right, outside or spiritually, this truth is going out, all right, and it's surrounding the head of the wicked, because ultimately, Esau can, do everything that he wants, pertaining to his rulership and his hegemony, but he still has the fact that he has committed iniquity, all right, and that's going to be in the back of his mind, because the Lord requires that which is past.
Yep.
Could we get let me get that definition for surround, because when we actually go into the word for rain, that word for rain, I'm gonna get it real fast. All right, and it reads, it says H. It says H4306. It says matar. It says rain. All right, let me go back to the root word, which is matar as well. It says to rain, to be rained on or upon, to rain, send rain. All right, and then it says cause to rain. Excuse me, it says to rain, to pour down rain. All right, so again, when it rains, the water surrounds the head of those that's outside. Now let's get that word for surround, and it says to enclose on all sides, envelope, to enclose as to cut off communication or retreat, to form or be a member of the entourage of, because everybody, it says to form or be a member of the entourage of, all right, because essentially everybody's affected by the rain. So it says to constitute part of the environment of, because as this water is going out, everyone is going to be affected, whether that's good or whether that's bad. So it says to extend around the margin or edge of, encircle, to cause to be surrounded by something. It says something such as a border or ambient environment that surrounds. The water is a part of the environment. This word is a part of the environment. All right. The end was prophesied from the beginning. All right, and it's playing out as we speak. Did a brother grab that Job Ayawab 36?
Con, I got it.
Can I
36 and
read this
7.
for you real quick? Can you good, Quantum?
It's in the Good News Bible, Deuteronomy 32:2. It says, "My teaching will fall like the drops of rain, and form on the earth like dew. My words will fall like showers on young plants, like gentle rain on tender grass." But like I said, if it'll form on the earth, which is going back to surrounding the earth, right? Covering everything. That dew is 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 surrounding the entire globe with prophecy, man. Right, and like you may mention, people are either going to be immersed in it, right, the elect, or they're going to be drowning in it, right, which is everyone else, man.
Yep.
God.
This is Job chapter 36 and verse 7, correct?
27.
27, kind. Job 36 and 27, it says, "For he maketh small the drops of water, they pour down rain according to the vapor thereof."
Right, and it says, "For he maketh small the drops of excuse me, maketh small the drops of water." All right, and this is pursuant to what Esau calls the evaporation cycle, which it really goes back to the operations of the Lord. The Lord is in charge of everything on this planet Earth, or everything. He exists. He in His hand is all existence.
Mhm. Verse 28, "Which the clouds do drop and distill upon man abundantly."
Right. It says, "And distill upon man abundantly." And going back to the brother Quanawal's point, either it's going to be immersed, and when you go into a true immersion, it goes into that baptism. So that shows us that Yahweh Shai is the ultimate water. All right. So you're either going to be immersed, or essentially someone would just be submerged and they're just going to drown in it, with 2/3 and the heathen being drowned in it.
Yep.
Would
You
and
walk.
and then going back to the point where it says surround, again is going to envelope. All right, and going back to the point of to reiterate, as a surrounding, it's essentially going into prophecy. So I'm gonna get this real fast. This is
Con, I got something
Cornwall, could you,
behind you.
huh?
I said I got something behind you.
Con Cornwall, could you also grab the one the northwest, east, or south? I think it's Ezekiel
Okay.
chapter 7. But this is I'm gonna get this real fast. This is Isaiah chapter 55, and we'll get verse 10. It says, "For as the rain cometh down and the snow from heaven, and returneth not thither," because when it rains, it doesn't, automatically just go back up into the clouds. It has to go through a whole cycle. But it says, "For as the rain cometh down and the snow from heaven, and returneth not thither, but watereth the earth, and maketh it bring forth and bud, that it may give seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it." So the Lord doesn't, waste His words. The Lord isn't going to make His word come back void. All right, everything is going to be accomplished. Everything is going to set out for its purpose that the Lord intended for it to do.
Yep.
You said you had a precept, bro?
Yeah, I did.
Are you good?
Um, just thinking about, the fact, that the Lord is dropping his doctrine as rain, right? And like brothers are saying, either you're gonna, take of that, or it's just gonna drown you. It made me think about, rain barrels. And rain barrels are used for water storage. The scriptures speak about he that believeth on me, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. So by taking in that rain and storing up that rain, that wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, we pretty much are transformed as conduits. You know, to pretty much put out that rainwater. To put out the doctrine of Yahweh Shemal Shai. But I wanted to grab this right quick. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 15. "For we are unto the Most High a sweet savor of Hamashiach in them that are saved and in them that perish. To one we are the savior of death unto death, and to the other the savior of life unto life." So, you know, the perspective of how Jake, receives of that rain, to some it may be, distilled to, cultivate. and allow things to grow. Because that was one thing when I looked up a water barrel. It's used to help with cultivating plants. Helping to water plants. It might be of use to a Jake that's of the elect, but to a 2/3, they get drowned in it. They like, damn, I don't. This is too much water.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it says, and who is sufficient for these things? So I just want to make that point.
Because when you look at it, plants ultimately, the elect is receiving of that the water to where it's working to the growth, and for 2/3, it will actually be a detriment to them. Pursuant to let me get this real fast. Pursuant to this right here, this is John chapter 3 and verse 19. All right, and it says, and this is the condemnation, which, again, the scripture speaks in similitudes, so this light is also water in the spirit. And it says, and this is the condemnation, that the light is come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because also plants to grow, they need light. You need water, you need light. So it says, light is coming to the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. So ultimately, that light, all right, which is synonymous with Yahweh Shai, and Yahweh Shai is ultimately that baptism as well. He's also the water. So the light, all right, is shining upon their deeds, and ultimately, that's going to work to their detriment. Because they ultimately want to be in the darkness. They don't want to take any type of accountability. So that water will actually come in, and it will be of a detriment to them. But I'm gonna continue on. It says, for everyone that doeth evil hated the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deed should be reproved. But he that doeth the truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in the Most High. So ultimately, the elect are going to use the light, all right, and use the Lord Yahweh Shai, all right, to grow, to grow up into that plant, a plant of righteousness.
Yep.
Yeah. You want that, Ezekiel?
Khan Baba Kushar.
This is Ezekiel chapter 7 and verse 2. I'll start in verse 1 in the NLT. Then this message came to me from the Lord: Son of man, this is what the sovereign Lord says to Israel: The end is here. Wherever you look, east, west, north, or south, your land is finished.
So it says that the end is here. Pretty much pursuant to Second Ezra 9th chapter, the end is manifest. We got Trump. He dropping them tariffs. All right, which pretty much is going to lead to hyperinflation. All right, crime is running rampant. All right, that's why we seeing a lot of these stories, that we see in like Newsbreak, or whatever news app that we go on to. Some of the stuff that the titles, you like, damn, like that really happened. Which pretty much it fulfills the love of many waxing cold. You
Hmm.
got that, you got wars, you got earthquakes. I think in Myanmar, last time I checked, the death
Mm-hmm.
toll was like 2,700. So all of these things are being brought to the forefront, no matter where you look at. You look over here, you look over there, you look over there, in each direction. All right, it's the end. It's screaming the end.
Yep.
That's it. I got one for you real quick.
Mm-hmm.
It's 2nd Ezra 16 and 39. Well, I'll start in 37. It reads, Behold, the plagues draw nigh and are not slack, as when a woman with child in the 9th month bringeth forth her son. Within 2 or 3 hours of her birth, great pains compass her womb, right? And going back to that, to surround, right? That compass, right? It's overtaking this place, man, right? It says, which pains when the child cometh forth, they slack not a moment. Even so, shall not the plagues be slack to come upon the earth, and the world shall mourn, and sorrow shall come upon it on every side.
Mm.
Right? So, prophecy is surrounding this place, man. You know, and it's either, like you may mention, it's surrounding you for good or it's surrounding you for evil, man.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the elect are looking forward to these things, right? While the rest of these people are in a state of panic, a state of turmoil, man.
Right.
Yep.
This is Second Ezra chapter 9 and verse 1. It says, He answered me then and said, Measure thou the time diligently in itself, And when thou seest part of the signs past, which I have told thee before, then shalt thou understand that is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world, which he made. And ultimately we're seeing the signs again to reiterate. You got the famines. Pretty much in the chat. It was to where Target, they said it was closing all 1,978 stores the other day or sometime soon or something like that. But they did that a couple weeks ago. So pretty much alluding to a famine. So that they're shutting down the Target stores and they're allowing for the other stores to pick up the slack. Which they're pushing to the masses that um, this is like it's supposed to be like a training event or something like that. But really, it's just showing that it's a famine. You got that. You got Trump cutting all the jobs. It's Isaiah 19 going into there shall be no work for Egypt. Ecclesiastes 12. All right, the grinding is ceasing. All right, crime is rampant. Pretty much everything is going on simultaneously. All right, showing us that the Lord is working. Psalms 119 and verse 126. All
Yep.
right, continuing on, it says,
I wanted
yeah.
to I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to just make a quick point. Like you said, the Lord is working. You
Mm-hmm.
know, those raindrops is getting heavier. You know, to where it's really starting to drown out all. Like when rain starts to hit the ground, like
Mm-hmm.
heavy rain, you can't hear nothing but that rain. So the rain is getting heavier and heavier, and people are just getting drowned out by the sound of the prophets coming with the doctrine of Yahweh Bashem Shai.
Right. It's like that. It's like that. Um, if bro's ever been into a building or like a house or something like that, and it's like a little trickle, you put a bucket down there, you can kind of ignore it.
Hmm.
Then it starts to pour in, and then now you got to pay attention to it because it's like damn, like now the whole the roof gonna cave in. So like you said, everybody is having to put their attention upon prophecy. You know,
Yep.
but continuing on in Second Ezra chapter 9 and verse 3, it says, "Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes," in which I think the earthquake was like 7.7, and then Texas had about 6 earthquakes the other day. So it says, "Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world," all right, it was uproars, which I haven't really heard too much on it. Maybe two or three things, but in Kenya, they're in uproar right now, and it says
Well, if I
uproars
may
of
add too,
the.
you just have little things taking place right now as far as domestically, right? They had the situation right now that's hot. The hot button issue is the Jake that stabbed the Edomite at the track meet, right? So now you're seeing that division, those seeds being planted because now you got two different narratives being spoken on, which ultimately is just causing that division to intensify.
hmm And then not to mention, the uproars and the civil unrest that is ensuing in America. Because I mean, it's not really majorly talked about, but that spirit of that Edomite hatred for Jake is back on the rise.
Yep.
Verse 4, it says, "Then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning, because the end was prophesied from the beginning." All right, the whole scriptures was set up like that. Even, with the Hebrew, everything essentially is intertwined and all connects with each other. All right, pretty much going back to the word of the Lord. So it says, "For like as all that is made in the world hath the beginning and an end, and the end is manifest." Hey, the end is manifest. No matter where we look, north, west, east, south, so all surrounding areas. Pretty much this truth is surrounding everything. All right. I'm gonna get this too. This is this is Isaiah 46 and verse 10. It says, "Declaring the end from the beginning and from the ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand and I will do all my pleasure," because this is the Lord's movie. That's why it goes into scriptures. It's a script. All right. Ultimately, the Lord is essentially putting forth his plans. All right. He's doing what he wants. All right. Verse 11, it says, "Calling a ravenous bird from the east, the man that executeth my counsel from a far country. Yeah, I have spoken it. I will also bring it to pass." All right. Pursuant to Isaiah 55, "I have purposed it. I will also do it." It says, Yeah, that's pretty much the point, because whatever the Lord has purpose, whatever He has in His plans, all right, that's essentially what's going to happen. All right, and it doesn't matter about how someone feels about it, what that's gonna be like in their future. That doesn't matter. All that matters is the Lord's word coming into fruition, and it's going to come into fruition. You know, so I'm gonna get this to it, but brother didn't have nothing.
I got a real quick definition for you.
Kyle, you good?
It's manifest in the Elam Online Dictionary. It reads clearly revealed to the eye or the understanding, open to view or comprehension. It says evident, palpable, directly from the Latin manifestus, plainly apprehensible, clear, apparent, evident. It says proved by direct evidence, caught in the act. Right. So what's the act? Is Yahweh Shemel Shai, right, working in the earth, man. Right. We're watching all these things take place as the will of Yahweh Shemel Shai, man. Right. So it's clear, it's clear, it's plain, right? Like the scriptures say, right? Make these things plain upon tables, right? It's being made more and more plain day by day what's taking place, man.
Mm-hmm. I got this too. And this is Matthew Matthew chapter 7, and we'll get verse 24. Because we understand that something is coming, through the Spirit. So it will behoove us to build our house on something that's stable. Because
Yep.
that water is coming. The water is already here. But the chief brunt of that water, all right, ultimately, it's coming. So again, it will behoove us. Or excuse me, not the water, but essentially the different adversities are coming. So in order for us to be ultimately protected, we want to essentially be in a firm foundation. Because again, spiritually, being that the water, the prophecies, the word is essentially coming upon the planet Earth. Again, it's going to affect people in different ways. With the elect is going to work to their good. All right, with 2/3 and the heathen. Hey, well, the heathen they don't got a chance. But with 2/3, they essentially going hand in hand. With the heathen. So by default, they're essentially putting themselves in a disadvantageous position. So I'm gonna get this. This is Matthew chapter 7 and verse 24. It says, therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man, which built his house upon a rock. And the rain descended. Oh, yeah, well, there it is. It says, and the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. So the rains are descending. All right. Essentially, the floods and the winds. All right. Essentially, going into the different adversities that's going to come upon this planet Earth.
Right.
All right, in which we're seeing, some of those happening as we speak. You see, but again, to reiterate, that the chief brunt of it, all right, is going to come here shortly. All right, the different adversities being, the MOTB when that temptation is brought upon the planet Earth. All right, those that ultimately plan correctly. All right, because the scriptures say, prepare. It says, prepare thy work without and make it fit for thyself in the field, and afterwards build thine house. So ultimately, those that have been preparing, they're going to be protected. They're going to be the ones that are going to be founded and established in that true foundation, that rock. All right, so it says verse 25, it says, and the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. And that's going into the elect, that rock being Yahweh Shai. And it says, and everyone that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened unto a foolish man which built his house upon the sand, and the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. Because again, you know, um, those things are likened to the different adversities. All right. With 2/3, when you go to the beach, all right, you made that sand castle, and it was right beside or right behind the shoreline. All right, when that water came, it swept it right up under. But if you was to make a house on some stable ground, all right, ultimately is likened to this similar to those that are essentially making their houses near the shoreline in that sand. All right, they're going to be taking it in the different set of adversities, whatever calamity that the Lord has essentially set up for them in Jacob's trouble. So I'm
Yep.
gonna get this as well. This is Second Ezra chapter 15, and we'll get verse 1. It says, behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in my mouth, saith the Lord. And ultimately, years ago, people felt as if, bros are just speaking their own words, but this is the word straight from the Lord. The Lord is essentially, the scriptures say in Ezekiel, the 3rd chapter, give them warning from me, because the Lord is ultimately bringing the death and the destruction. So it
Right.
says,
Hey, like the brother
mhm,
Tazwan said, that rain is getting louder, man.
mhm,
It's everybody's in the house, right? Living it up. But then you hear the roar of that rain and that wind, start, and you can't avoid it anymore, man.
mhm. It's like Jake. It's like Jake used to have those back in the day. Jake used to have them hurricane parties.
Hmm.
Then they gotta go back to the crib and then face the blunt of damn, like they shit just got destroyed.
Exactly.
Jay worry about partying and bullshit. Cause like even now as we speak, you still got certain Jakes that are completely oblivious, even though it's still gonna affect them. They're completely oblivious to what it is that they need to. They don't have any type of going. I can't remember what precept it is, but it talks about hypocrite or not hypocrite. You can't discern the signs of the times.
Hmm.
You know, pretty much. It's affecting Jake. But Jake still wants to be in a bubble of complete, idiocracy and obliviousness. Jake just want to be what Jake into, but like we're going into, eventually it's going to come to the point in time to where it's like, they gonna have to directly face it, because right now Jake is feeling the squeeze, but they're going about it in an indirect means. All right, they're just trying to ignore it. They're trying to run away from it. But it's coming to the point where that squeeze is getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter until it's like, all right, now it's like, all right, it's unavoidable. It's imminent.
That's it.
But this is Second Ezra chapter 15 and verse 2. It says, and cause them to be written in paper. And Jake, the saying in the world, if it's in black and white, that mean that it's legit. So how much more so for the word of the Heavenly Father? So it says, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true. Fear not the imaginations against thee. Let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that speak against thee. Incredulity goes back to unbelief. It says, for all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness. So being that they didn't want to, they willingly didn't want to believe. All right, ultimately, are they going to be destroyed in their unbelief and their incredulousness? So it says, verse 5, it says, behold, saith the Lord, I will bring plagues upon the world, which Claude Schwab had called it the polycrises, which that's really, Esau likes to sensationalize things, just like he said sensationalize the thing with Target, just like he sensationalized the plagues of the Lord. It pretty much they try to play upon the people's emotions. So if they can spin a situation to where it's going to be in their favor and they can swing it negatively, all right, that's what they'll do. If they can make something seem as if it's less and somebody doesn't need to really pay attention to it, that's what they'll do. So they use their words. Scripture say, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart, because that's ultimately what he's doing. He sensationalizes the minds of the people. So it says, and again too, it's gonna come a point in time to where like he's not gonna be able to sensationalize people's minds. It's gonna be like, yeah, like, no, you gotta face this. So it says, behold, said the Lord, I will bring plagues upon the world, the sword. All right, we're seeing different variations of the sword. All right. Esau, like in North Carolina, he's made it easier to obtain, firearms, and then also other killing instruments. And that's why we're seeing the uptick in crime. All right, he's made it to where um, it used to be a super extensive checklist and requirements to get firearms, but now again he's making it to where people can obtain firearms within like 30 minutes to an hour. They just walk into the store and buy one,
No,
and,
niggas.
and, and people and oh, you had some to add, bro?
No, I was gonna say niggas is making 3D printed switches,
Right,
putting
Right.
that shit on a Glock.
right. So yeah, it says the sword, and again, we're seeing the uptick in the sword. All right, killing instruments. It says famine. All right, we spoke about the target. All right, Also, when you go to when we go to different restaurants, um, say like they'll say, okay, you're buying a large, but you can obviously see that this container is like a small or a medium. They're like, yeah, $17. You're like, bro, what? So that pretty much goes into the inflation. All right. Excuse me, inflation, yeah, but then also going into the famine, all right, because they're playing upon the people's minds, and you know, or they may do something like they may give somebody a huge container and then put a little bit of food in it, try to make it seem spread the food out, make it seem like it's a lot of food, but that really just goes into the fact that it's a famine.
Right. They condition people to live with less.
Hmm.
That's why, going back to that Target point you made, they did that shutdown for 24 hours or wherever it was. It's just getting people used to not being able to have access to things. You
Hmm.
know,
Hey, shit, even with like a lot of stuff, what they've been doing, the GMOs for a hot little minute now, but you can tell that the food ain't really that nutritious. So they're using fake means to provide food, but really it's not really food. So all of that pretty much plays into the famine. But it says death and destruction, in which death is happening. You cut the news app on, it's a death almost every couple of minutes. It wasn't very prevalent a few years ago that you'll see people, dropping 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But now that's like the norm. We was at camp, not too long ago, and dude was running around and shooting people and stuff like that. So it's becoming a norm. And it says, for wickedness hath exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. Therefore, saith the Lord, I will hold my tongue no more as touching their wickedness, which they profanely commit, neither will I suffer them in those things in which they wickedly exercise themselves. Behold, the innocent and righteous blood crieth unto me. All right, Ezekiel the ninth chapter. All right, ultimately, the elect is in the spirit of sighing and crying unto the Lord for the abominations that's being done in the midst, you know. And it says, and the souls of the just complain continually. And essentially, this is done via prayer, But going back up to the top of verse 8, it says, I will hold my tongue no more as touching their wickedness. All right. Pursuant to Isaiah the 59th chapter, all right, verses 14 to 15. It's no truth being upheld. It's no justice. It's no balance. Or excuse me, equity, which goes back to balance. None of that is being upheld. All right, in the world right now. So again, pursuant to Psalms 119 and verse 126, it's time for the Lord to work. Because the law has been made void. So the Lord is bringing judgment. All right, that's why we're seeing these different things happen. All right, we're seeing the plagues upon Egypt, all right, and also upon the rest of the world happen as we speak. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep going to verse 10, and that'll be it. If I'm gonna go to verse 11, I'm gonna go to verse I'm gonna go to verse 12, and that'll be it. Bros ain't had nothing. This is Second Ezra chapter 15. I'm gonna go to verse 9. It says, and therefore saith the Lord, I will surely avenge them and receive unto me all the innocent blood from among them, going into the elect, because the Lord has preserved the remnant. And it says, behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt, in which, previously, in that first Exodus, all of Egypt was delivered, you see. But in this day and time, the Lord is dealing with the remnant, or the 144,000, and the rest of the one-third remnant, all right. Those are going to be the individual. Those are going to be the souls that are delivered, all right, from the impending doom that's kind of coming upon the planet Earth. So it says, verse 11.
If I may add too,
Mm-hmm.
that's why the Lord's, getting with a lot of these false teachers and these false prophets. You know, they've had their hand and forward in the hand of the wicked, the evildoers. By leading our people astray, having them go into different things that's outside of the truth of Yahweh Shai. So much so they come against the truth and try to combat against the will of Yahweh Shai.
Kind. That's what we, um, we're seeing, people like Polite, all right, a lot of those false prophets and stuff
Yep.
like that. They've been exposed. All right, now going into the circumcision, those different groups are being exposed. You know,
Yep.
scriptures say, smite the shepherd, and the sheep shall scatter.
Yep.
So, going back to verse 11, 2nd Ezra 15, verse 11, it says, "But I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm, and smite Egypt with plagues as before, and will destroy all the land thereof." All right, and them plagues are essentially going into, again, what Klaus Schwab called the polycrises. All right, which goes into which we can see them on a micro level, but these things are happening on a macro level, because you got the famine, or you got the different programs that are being touched. All right, the Lord is removing. He's putting the spirit on Esau to remove those different programs. All right, also the jobs. All right, all of these things are comprised in the plagues. All right, what else? Um, Pretty much, yeah, just going into the plagues, and the things that are smiting that are smiting this place are the things that comprise and the foundation of America, Babylon the Great, what made it a great empire. All right, those things are being removed. All right, and this place is being exposed and it's going down. All right, and you had Jake that was essentially subscribing to, all right, the different things that subscribing to the different things that helped him. You see, but again, those are being removed, and Jake is being faced with two options. All right, to continue to see if Egypt will help, which is not, you see, or to serve the Lord, which the mass majority of Jake is going to go into Egypt for help. But we understand the scriptures say they're going to help to no avail. They're going to help in vain, because their strength is to sit still. Because this place is going down, so it's not going to be able to offer any type of succor to Jake. But
Yep.
nevertheless, continuing on, it says as before, and will destroy all the land thereof. Hey, this place is being destroyed. It says, verse 12, Egypt shall mourn. Everybody in Egypt is mourning. All right, from your Joe six pack drinking Edomites, all right, to Jake, to the heathen. America was known as a land of traffic, a land of merchandise. It was flowing. As far as the consumerism, but can't nobody consume none. Like can't nobody afford anything.
Right.
So it says, Egypt shall mourn, and the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague and the punishment that the Most High shall bring upon it. In which part of that foundation again went into that how it was a land of traffic. All right, America is the land of consumerism. Everybody essentially at one point was buying. Pretty much everybody in society was buying everything that they wanted, whatever their heart desired. You know, that's essentially the spirit of how America is. The leaders, they purchase things, from these other countries. So that's the mindset of the common Babylonians. But all of that is being bought low. You see, because what Trump is doing right now, he's bringing them tariffs. So whatever somebody wants, hey, they can get it. But it's gonna come with a pretty hefty, percentage rate or tax or whatever. You know, because it's not like America's going to be paying the tax. They're going to put that upon the consumers. All right, and people already don't have the jobs and stuff like that. So that the part of that foundation that's being touched. You know.
Exactly. Like you said, all these tariffs. They market it, so to speak, as if they're doing something to these other nations when it's really going to have more of a negative effect on the people, man. You know, they say they're charging them an extra 20% or whatever it is, but that's going to trickle down to you Babylonians out here, man. Right? So that's going into it, like the brother is reading, right? How Egypt shall mourn, right? And you read in Isaiah 19, when you read it in the Good News translation, it talks about how the Egyptians will lose their confidence, man, right? Or lose their courage, right? So this is what we're seeing take place is these people are losing their courage, they're losing that hope, right? Because that's what Trump was installed as president for, was to reestablish that American hope, right? But now we're seeing that, that start to fail them.
Okay. I got one more. That'll be it. This is Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 14. It says, "For the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea." And ultimately, this truth, again, all right, is spread throughout the four corners of the globe, all right, with the elect subscribing to the truth, all right, with the others, they're essentially just being submerged and being drowned in the truth, all right, because, this truth is exposing, everything, all right. But that's pretty much all I had, bros. I had nothing. Conway. Adonai Tazaza Banaya Palos, what that was a beautiful edification to the spirit. Wa Adonai Taza Adam Yashi Awam Tawab, Lord's will, you have a good day. Wa Shalom Lakam, which is peace unto you all. Well, we can go ahead and close it out by saying Kahalayim La, Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Wachakodash. While double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us his truth and rule well. And much respect to you, bros, out there pushing his truth with all righteousness and sincere shalom, shalom.
Shalom.